What does it mean to live unlimited? For some, it's learning to navigate a world not built for you. For others, it's discovering that strength isn't found in perfection, it's found in perseverance. The Living Unlimited podcast celebrates life without limits, real stories, raw conversations, and practical wisdom from people living boldly with limb differences. Each episode shines a light on what's possible when we choose courage over comparison and creativity over conformity. Because life isn't about what's missing, it's about what's possible. Thanks for coming back to another episode of Limited with Jessica Cox and myself, Pauline Victoria. We're so excited here to talk about what we're going to talk about today. And I know it's a hot topic, not just for Jessica and I, but for anybody else who's looking for love. So we're going to talk about and conquer the topic of dating. Dating.
Before you go any further, Pauline, I thought I heard you say limited, but you said unlimited, which is what I love about it, how it means two things for us.
Yes, absolutely. That's unlimited with a B in the middle.
Perfect. You get all the credit on that one. That's a good name for our podcast.
Yes, we are unlimited, life without limits, even in the dating world. Although I know from experience, it may feel like you are limited because of your limb differences, but I promise you, you're not. Tune in to this episode because Jessica and I are going to spill the beans about how we met our significant others, any past dating history, stories, good, the bad, the pretty, the ugly. Here we go.
I know, Pauline, you've been married now. You have a son. I don't even know how many years you have been married. How many years has it been?
2002 is when we got married. So I'm doing the math, about 23 years married.
Wow. 23 years. That's amazing. With one son. And he's how old?
Our son is 19 years old. We are a blended family. My husband is a little bit older and had children from previous relationships. So we are a blended family, and I helped raise others' children's before we had our own. So together we have 5 children. We have 4 beautiful, amazing kids. They're not kids, they're adults. I guess they're always kids to you. And then we have our last one that we had together that I gave birth to. And it's been quite the ride. How about you, Jessica? How long have you been married?
It's been now 13 and a half years,
Okay.
and not as long as you, and definitely have a lot less children. We have one fur baby, Chewy. He just captures our heart, and it's just wonderful to have that. But well before those years of marriage, undoubtedly, you and I, we have so many stories, so many perhaps not so good relationships for various reasons. Maybe some good relationships that just ended because they didn't work out. But I think we need to probably start at the very beginning, because when you start to go out to the dating world, you have to have a certain amount of self-worth to really date quality people and put yourself out there, because it's a vulnerable space. And for one, I was a late bloomer. I don't know about you, but I didn't even start dating until like college. Man,
Yeah.
I was really a late bloomer. So what about you?
I think I was later than you. I want to preface this conversation. I know it's going to be one of those, like, my mom's telling me this now. But before we talk about dating other people, I really do want to encourage you to date yourself. Having that relationship with yourself, knowing what are deal breakers, knowing what you're willing to compromise. All of those things I think are really important before we go into dating other people. And I'm not just saying that for people with limb differences. I think that's just an all around good advice for any woman or man who is looking to share their life with another person, because we're created to be in relationship with one another. And so it's natural for us to want to be in loving relationships with others, to love and to be loved. But if you don't love yourself, it's really hard for other people to love you too. So that's just my first soapbox moment on that.
Thank you, Pauline, for that, because that self-love, if you don't love yourself, how do you expect someone else to love you? Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Being a mom does that, right? You see all your other kids, you watch them, you're like, oh, no, you're not, you're compromising yourself too much in this. And just from experience, we talked about in a past episode about confidence and how having self confidence really changes your experience with other people and in the world. And so it really does start with yourself. And I know that's not where everyone wants to start. And when they talk about dating, but it really is probably the most important. It will set your tone for your dating journey if you haven't
Mhm.
already gone on it. I'm just going to be pure honest. Jessica, you probably have more experience in the dating world than I do. My husband is the first person I dated, my first kiss, my first everything. And so, yes, it is pretty sweet when he is a little bit older and has had a lot of different experiences in life than me. We come from very two different backgrounds. Essentially, I'm the good Catholic girl and he's the bad boy on the wrong side of the track. So I married a bad boy. He wasn't bad when I met him, but he did have his own experiences in life that were not probably good choices. But he's an amazing man and he was starting to date again. Someone told him there are no more virgins out there, and later on he prayed for a good Catholic girl to come into his life and he found, I guess, the last Catholic virgin.
No, they're out there.
They are. So, yeah, my experience with dating was more in the dreaming and wishing stage before I met my husband. And when I gave that little short soapbox speech before we started with this dating thing, it really is because from experience. When I wanted to date, like we all do, especially when we're teenagers or tweens, so you're like 11, 12 years old and you're liking the boy, and I had a bunch of crushes, but
Mhm.
I wanted to date to be validated as a
Mm.
person. And as long as I kept that motivation of dating, which is from a lack and scarcity point of view, it just wasn't happening. And the moment I released attachment from dating, I had a conversation with God and I was like, you know what? If you're calling me to the single life, I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that. I was working, I had about my first house, I had good friends, like everything in my life I was content with. I was grateful for.
Mhm.
And 3 days later, my husband walks into my life and changes ruined all my plans. This is why I say I speak from experience in terms of being able to love yourself first. But
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are your stories? I'm boring, Nancy.
No, 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 I love that, and it's all about timing. Like you said, 3 days later, when you were able to release that, you had opened yourself up to more and into something greater about love and not feeling the need to be validated and all that stuff. And I think it's all about timing and putting yourself in a good space to be open to someone who is also in a good space in their life, and that's why I felt fortunate about meeting my husband because we were both at that space together. But timing is a huge component of it. And like you, Pauline, I grew up in a household in a family of such independent women. Marriage, great. Not being married, that's great too. I had a favorite aunt of mine who wasn't married and she was like an idol and she was just that independent, strong woman that we didn't feel the women didn't have to be validated by men. And so I feel that was a fortunate upbringing that I took away from my childhood, is that I could go on to say I'm not any less because I'm not married. And if I get married, wonderful. If I don't, that's fine too. And that's how I spent most of my childhood. But like you, Pauline, I did have crushes on guys. And my biggest challenge when it came to serious relationships, because I may have dated nothing serious here and there, gone on a date or two. I even remember one blind date, which I have to tell that story because that was entertaining. Because my roommate in college was like, hey, I met this guy. You guys have a lot in common. Why don't I set up a date for you? And unbeknownst to me, she had some beer goggles on at the time. So I don't know what she saw in this guy, but I went out for this blind date, meeting this person, and I had this courage about myself that I drove to the date myself. And of course, I'm wondering in my head, how is he going to react to my not having arms? Is he going to be like, "Oh, never mind," or do something like that? I never had that kind of doubt about myself. But if I was curious as to how a guy set up on a blind date, how he would react. And I'm sure all the listeners are really listening into this as well, because I pulled up in my car. So I'm driving this car to meet up with this person at a restaurant. And I did not know this, but as I pulled in right beside his car. And so I'm like, how am I going to find this person? We all wonder that if you're out going on a blind date, how do I know? Where do I meet them at the door? Or I've never met this person in my entire life. And so I call him up and I say, hey, I'm here. Where are you? And he says, I think that's you. You just pulled in right beside me. And I look over and he's holding his phone up, sitting in the driver's seat, and it's him. So we both get out of the car together about the same time. He's getting out of his car, I'm getting out of my car, and we walk that sidewalk to the restaurant. And what I didn't realize is that because at that time in my life, I carried myself not as a victim, but as who I am, that he was probably experiencing the same insecurities as someone from the non-disabled standpoint about himself. And that's what we bring to the table when we go to blind dates or date someone, is that we don't realize that it's our own insecurities more than it is the judgment, I think, of the other person. And so he probably had his own insecurities. I had my own insecurities, but I carried myself in a way that he never even asked questions about my not having arms. We went through the meal together. I ordered wings and I used my toes to grab the food. And at no point during the entire date did he even ask me about why am I using my feet or why don't I have arms. It was just a date and I think that if you carry yourself in that way, that you're not wearing your disability in a way that it feels like it's the most important part of who you are, which we all have disabilities no matter who we are. Some of us invisible, some of us have visible disabilities. But if we wear our confidence, then that really is conveyed when we engage with someone. And so the date went well and he wanted to go on another date. And I was just like, I don't know. And I'm not sure about this. And I was in college and I didn't really want too many attachments at the time. So I didn't really pursue that. But I didn't have any serious relationships. And then after college, I started to realize maybe I should consider this, because you start to see people around you, your friends, and you yearn for something like that because it's different and you want to experience what a really good relationship is. And sometimes you see the good stuff more than some of the other stuff. And so you think of what it would be like to have a nice, good relationship with someone. I yearned for it at times, but then I was too busy with my life. And then I found myself in a place where I really wanted to take it to a serious level. But I knew I wanted to find someone who didn't love me or like me in an admiration kind of way. And at the same time, someone who didn't feel sorry for me. At the time, I felt like it was hard to find those quality people out there who can see you for you. And being that we have such a difference about us, it feels like it must be even more difficult. But there are a lot of people out there, and if you put yourself out there with the right energy, it's amazing how you can get drawn to that right person. And a lot of my girlfriends at times said, where are the good guys? Well, they're out there. You just have to put yourself out there and find them and be willing to believe that they're there. So I was in a good space in my life when I met my now husband, and I knew that requirement of me was I didn't want him to admire me for my not having arms and using my feet to adapt, because that's just who I am. And at the same time, I didn't want him to feel sorry for me, like he needed to help me or something like that. And talk about a straightforward guy. When we first met, he thought different of me because I walked into this Taekwondo school because we were both martial artists. And he was teaching at the time, and he saw me walk in to greet his co-instructor, who was my good friend from college. And she comes up to me and she reaches out her arms to embrace me in a big hug because we hadn't seen each other for at least a decade. And from his perspective, he saw me in the corner of the room not returning the hug. I don't have arms. So he thought I was being this rude person, not returning a hug, and just being that mean person. And he later found out the truth was I didn't have arms to return the hug. But he saw me for me after that misunderstanding. And I could tell that there wasn't like a feeling sorry for me there. And there wasn't too much admiration for me. And that's what I wanted to find someone. And I was in a good space in my life where I felt that self-worth and that feeling of marriage, great. Not being married, that's great too. Single life is fine too. So I was at that space when he came into my life, and he was also in that space. And it was a wonderful, it's about timing. A lot of it's about timing. As I mentioned before, timing is a huge factor. But we have to work on ourselves first to get there, to get to that very good place in life where we feel a sense of wholeness and with or without a partner. And once we have that, then we will draw the right people to us.
Yeah. Okay, so I have to ask really quick before I go into a deep question. What happened with the blind date guy?
Oh, yeah. Nothing. I was just like, he wanted to go on another date. I think he texted or called me or something, and I was too busy. So I wasn't like ready to go on to the next date. I didn't want to necessarily get tied down in a relationship at the time. And so it was fine. I was having too much fun in college with my girlfriends. Let's put it
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah, and when you say timing, I think when we even me, when I say timing, it's not necessarily, "Oh, this is the month that you should be going out," and, like, it's all about timing in the sense that we need to give ourselves time to get to know ourselves better. And
Yes.
again, like, what are the deal breakers? What are the compromises, like areas you're willing to compromise? Like my husband and I, we share nothing in common in terms of like our interests. We like different movies, we like different music, we like just different things, but our values are very similar. Our
Mhm.
personalities, and this is what happens when you build up your confidence, when you start stepping into yourself more courageously and confidently, is that other people who are insecure can't be in your energy. You need someone also who is very confident in themselves. Because in essence, and I'm curious what your husband's experience is in terms of being in the same space. Like if your guys are walking down the road, people are staring at you, but he's now also part of that package,
Mm.
right? Or if someone says something, how did that dynamic work out?
And you probably have similar stories too, where people will turn to the non-disabled individual to address or ask questions that are actually directed to and should be directed to the person with a disability, with a difference, a limb difference.
Yeah.
But due to that person's insecurity, which is unfortunate because it's unfortunate that they can't see you as a human being and needing to be addressed directly, they have to go to the other person, and Patrick will do other things like, I don't know, ask her. Something like that to remind people, and sometimes we have to do that to remind people that while it may be shocking to you to experience someone with a limb difference for the very first time, it doesn't mean that you should behave as if they're any less. You need to behave and treat everyone with respect, and unfortunately, that's something we have to advocate for. It takes a lot of energy at times, but it also helps remind them that they should not demean the next person that they meet who happens to be different. That we are who we are, and they can get over it.
Yeah, and, without our husbands here, it's hard to ask them or get to know, like, what has their experience been, because in a way, we can be in a fishbowl. People are always, like,
Yes.
looking at us and
Mhm.
how they react, like, they didn't ask to be in a fishbowl, they just wanna be our partners in life, but it is something that comes along with it, and so I do believe that it is important that when we do choose a partner, that we choose someone who's very comfortable in their own skin as well, and they're confident in themselves because they are joining what comes with us as well.
The whole package.
Yeah,
Yes, it's true.
absolutely. The whole
Yeah.
package, even if there's missing parts. Do you have any advice? What advice would we give someone who is
You started off right. I think that's true. Find yourself and who you are and who you wanna be with, and not compromising on that, but giving yourself the time to figure that out. For some, that might be the first 20 years, some people in the first 40 years, some people 60 years, 80 years. We're all still trying to find ourselves, but you have to be able to give yourself the grace and know that we have to build ourselves up and work on ourselves first and foremost.
and I just wanna remind you as you're watching or listening to this, you are lovable. Don't believe the lie that you're not lovable because on the outside, we look different. You really are lovable, but we don't need other people to validate that belief. You have to believe that first. And then by believing it, then other people will naturally be attracted to that kind of energy. So, yes, it's a journey. It's not an easy journey. Lots of tears can be shed. I know I cried a lot because it's like, why doesn't that boy like me? And all the things. But a lot of people look at, and I'm sure, I don't know if you get these compliments too with Jessica, with your marriage, that people would love to have the marriages that we have. And we're very blessed. And I don't take that for granted. And being married is a whole other topic. And we'll dive into that topic another time for another episode. But I think this is a good start for this conversation. I know dating could be a very large, encompassing conversation, but I think this is a good place to end today's episode.
Thank you, Pauline. I agree.
All right, everyone. Thank you again for tuning in. Remember, work on yourself, love yourself, and others will come and meet you there. And you're worth it. You really are. So thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
They said there's only one way to live, but we were born to redefine it. We found light in the hardest places, turned the struggle into guidance. Every scar, every stare, every door once closed became the wind beneath our hopes. We're not what the world expects to see. We're the proof